Hi my wonderful weirdlings, this is Beyond Authentic, where we go beyond the mundane to tell you all about authentic witchcraft. My name's Lisa, and in today's video I'll be delving into my top 10 tips for baby witches. So if that sounds interesting, stay tuned. First of all, I just want to start by saying these aren't in any particular order. Well, they kind of are, but they're not. So I'm not ranking them. So in other words, all of this advice is pretty much what I would give you if you were sat here in person right now next to me having a coffee and you said, you know, Lisa, I've started looking into witchcraft. I'm not sure kind of exactly what to do from here. What would your advice be? These are pretty much the tips that I would give you, except obviously it would be in a conversation rather than just in a list format. Also, when I say baby witch in this video, I am referring to anybody of any gender, any age and any background, okay? All I'm saying by baby witch is somebody at the beginning of their witchcraft journey. So you could think of yourself as a beginner, as somebody new to it, as an apprentice, as somebody just interested in witchcraft. All of that, I'm just going to say baby witch. Just makes things easier. Right then, so let's get on with the video. My first top tip for a baby witch. My first top tip is to start with the basics. Yeah, now don't get me wrong, I know when you first come into it, we're all excited about the possibilities of magic. We all want to go like this and create a fireball in the palm of our hands. But that isn't genuine magic, that isn't genuine witchcraft. When I talk about the basics, I'm talking about the things like grounding work, energy work, protection work, and your intentions. So those for me are the four main areas that you really need to be concentrating on when you first come into witchcraft, or when you first start with an interest in the craft. Okay, so let's go into it. So grounding, what do I mean by grounding? Grounding is a method of basically having your energy, centering your energy and feeling your place within the universe right here in this moment, so that your mind isn't wandering, you're not thinking about what you're going to have for tea or what you need to get at the shops or what homework you need to do, any of that. You are in the moment, you are grounded, you are feeling your presence on this planet at this moment in time. That is really, really important. So there's all sorts of videos on YouTube. I will do a video on some of these basics as well moving forward. So if that sounds like something you'll be interested in, put a comment down below just to let me know which of these videos you'll be interested in. But there's a lot of work you can do with grounding, and it is just about, as I say, feeling that ground under you, feeling part of this interconnected web, feeling part of the universe. And once you've got that down, you can move on to energy work. Now when I say energy work, you can think of it as auras, you can think of it as balls of glowing energy, if that's how you visualize it. You can think of it in many different ways, but you really want to start feeling that metaphysical, that esoteric, that weird and wonderful energy that is part of the universe. Okay, so one way of doing that is you can literally clap your hands and then move your hands slightly further apart. You want your fingers slightly apart as well. So you clap your hands and then move your fingers slightly apart, and you can almost feel there's like a magnetic pull pulling your hands back together. Okay, so this is just feeling energy. And if you kind of practice, you can almost pulsate that energy, whether you're doing it as I'm doing it now by moving my hands, or whether you keep your hands still and then concentrate and visualize the space in between your hands, visualize the energy flow there. And then once you've started to do that, visualize other parts of your body. So hold your hands and just feel where your aura is, feel how far your energy extends, just in a relaxed state, not doing any particular magical working, but where does your energy extend to? Does it extend, you know, a couple of centimeters away from your physical hand? Does it extend all the way out? Where can you feel that energy? For me, I feel it really strongly in the palms of my hand. Now, I've got quite a bit of experience with auras and healing work and things like that, and drawing down energies, and that's actually why I've got my two tattoos where they are, because I've got one here which is smaller and one here that is larger. So for me, I pull energy in with this hand, I put it through myself, I filter it if you like, and I discharge, or I send out that energy with this one, which is why this star is slightly bigger. So for me, that's my method. There are plenty of methods. Again, looking at energy work, you can look at visualization, you can do a lot of meditation, mindfulness, to really connect with your energy, and from there lots of other energy work can develop. But once you've got that basics of where your energetic field extends, then you can start doing some really fun things. Way back when I was starting out, so probably about a year 2 or 3 into my craft journey, I used to like experimenting with energies in rooms. So I would sit in a room full of people and I would try and make myself invisible, which, you know, being this size isn't the easiest of things. But I would try and blend my energy in as much as I can with the background energies of that room. Bring my energetic levels, my vibration, bring that frequency to the background level of the room and see how long I could just sit there not being noticed. Or I would do the flip side, where I would just sit there and I would suddenly try and expand my energy, not moving, not doing anything particularly visual so that nobody would really notice, but just trying to expand my energy to somehow get my auric field, my energy field, to make it buzz, to make it glow, to make it bright white or bright purple or whatever colour, and to really extend that out, make it so that in my mind, in my visualization, in my magical working, that energy was so bright that it was blinding. And I would draw on energy from the cosmos, from the universe, from the gods, from the deities, from Gaia. I would draw on that energy and I would really almost like something going nuclear, you know, like a poof, and I would send that energy, not with any intent, just to try and see whether I could make people notice. So a couple of those experiments, and through doing that I really learned, for me, how to kind of flow my energy, how to feel that energy, how to send it, how to direct it. The next one of the basics I mentioned is protection. Now this is something that when you're first starting off you think, oh, I might learn a couple of rituals that'll get me protection. No, my friend. This is something you are going to be constantly upgrading, constantly learning new techniques of, pretty much for as long as you're a part of this craft. Because the more that you know, the more that you learn, the more that you want this protective energy around you. You want these wards in place, you want protection spell bottles and sigils and all of these things. You're gonna want to be using them just to cover your own arse, because as you develop in your practice, you may go down certain areas where you may be dealing with other energies, and that can sometimes need extra protection, but also just in the general mundane world. Now in the 21st century, social media absolutely runs our world. Now you can be active and open and out of the broom closet as a witch, or you can be really closeted, not saying anything out there, and you're still going to get hate. Whether that's because you're wearing last season's clothes, whether that's because your makeup isn't perfect, or you're not a size 0, or just because somebody's just an ignorant troll and they're just sending you abuse. You're always going to get that. Added to that, people will sometimes throw you the side eye. They'll just be like, or they might make a nasty comment, or they might say something to you because you wronged them in some minor way, and they might be like, yeah, well, I hope you go and do whatever. All of that negativity can come your way, and that's why you want to be constantly looking at the protection you use. Can you enhance it? Can you upgrade it? Can you strengthen it? Is it still working for you in the same way? And that's really important, not just when you first start out, but throughout your craft journey. And of course, the other part of the basics for me is your intentions. How to set your intentions. At what part does your spell begin? Now for a lot of people, that will be when they've gathered all their ingredients and they've got their scroll in front of them and they've got all their salts kind of circle laid out and their candles on their pillars. That's when they start their ritual. For me, I start setting my intention the minute I start thinking about a working. For example, if I was doing an abundance working, I might be thinking, oh, I've got a bill that I need to get paid, so I need to do some sort of working to bring that extra money in to cover this bill. So how much do I need? So right from the beginning, I'm starting to set that intention. How much do I need to cover this bill? How am I going to do it? What kind of working am I going to use? Does this need to be a full-on bells and whistles, all of the work, you know, doing everything you possibly can because it's a really big lump sum? Or do I just need 30 quid to come into my bank account a little bit early? You know, what is it that you need? What is it that you need for your intention, for your working? And then what I would do is to start to think about, right, say I need, I don't know, 500 quid. So £500, quite a bit of money. How is that going to manifest? Is that going to be a scratch card win? Is that going to be the chance to do some work? Is that going to be, you know, an inheritance because somebody in my life passes away? Which of these do I want to look at? Obviously, we don't really want somebody passing away. So this is where setting your intention starts to kind of, it's almost like a funnel to narrow down the areas that you're looking at. So I want to be quite specific because I don't want to have an inheritance, quite frankly. So then we're going to rule that one out. So then we're looking at a more positive thing. What about scratch cards and gambling? That's a really dangerous way of trying to manifest workings and money. It is possible in theory. We've all seen on the news, you know, that couple that just bought the one lottery ticket that one time and mysteriously won $10 million or £10 million. We hear those stories. What you don't hear is the hundreds of thousands of people spending probably beyond their means on scratch cards and lottery and gambling and everything else to try and have that same experience as that one random couple. So for me, I would rule that out. So then it leaves us kind of with that work or kind of other avenue of raising that £500. So this is when I'm starting to set my intention before I've even gathered ingredients or looked at anything or decided on the moon cycle or whatever it is that you're going to work. Now at this point, when I've ruled out various areas that I want this abundance to manifest from, this is when I will now start looking at correspondences, deities, herbs, crystals, whatever it is, candle magic, and I will start pulling those bits and those items together that feel right for me. Okay, so for me, right from the beginning of I need to do a working, and this is the type of working, that's when I start setting my intentions. So that by the time I am sat in circle, or by the time I am sat with the ingredients for the spell, sat in front of me, ready to do that ritual, everything has been thought out. So that when I'm actually in my ritual space, when I've lit that candle, when I'm mixing those herbs, when I'm putting this crystal with that crystal, whatever it is I'm doing, at that point, the intentions have been set for the whole build up to the working, that the actual working itself is almost the cherry on top. Think of it as starting an engine in a car. So whether you put the key in and turn it, whether you crank it like the old Ford Model Ts, or whether it's like a modern car where you press a button, or you even like one of the Teslas where you somehow walk up to it and it mysteriously scans your DNA to see whether you are the designated driver, whatever, right? It's dead simple, isn't it? You do that, the engine starts, off you go. But how much work and preparation had to go into that one spark, that one moment where the engine starts? Think about how many years and years and years of development went into it, how many engineers, how many mechanics, how many people were involved in the entire process so that you could go to your car and turn a key or press a button. And that's the way I like to think about magic and witchcraft, is that you do all of that work in advance to get to that moment where you get a little spark. So that is my first top tip. My next top tip is to learn how to power down. Now, what do I mean by this? What's powering down? Like, I've got fibro, so my body powers me down all the time because I literally just fall asleep unconscious. That's not what I mean. I don't mean like learn how to shut down. I mean learn how to close off that magical conduit within yourself. Okay, so if you're doing the energy work, as I said before, then one of those areas you might go into is healing or aura work or something like that, and that can be exhausting if you don't know how to turn that ability off, if you don't know how to kind of shut down that part of your brain. One of the things that I was drawn to early on in my craft was healing and aura work. So I would tap into somebody's aura and I would feel that energy. Now that's great in a particular setting, in a controlled environment where I've got the person in front of me, or I'm doing a bit of distance work or whatever it is, and I'm focusing on that one person. But you don't really want that ability kicking in when you're pushing a trolley around a supermarket, do you? You don't want to be kind of picking up other people's auras and bad energy and all of that when you're in a crowded environment, because it can be very, very overwhelming. So learn to power down those kind of things that you're starting to build up. So it's a bit like building in an off switch. Yeah. To put it another way, I love one of Eddie Izzard's stand-up routines where she talks about being the god of creation and destruction, and how you need to be the god of both. Otherwise, you just go boom, there's a universe. Ah, you don't like that one? I'll just go and stick it in the garage with the 15 others I've created this morning. You know what I mean? So, and it's the same kind of principle. Learning how to power on that energy conduit, learning how to see people's auras, or to work with spirits, or to hear clairaudience, all of that, that's fantastic. But you really need to learn how to shut that ability, how to turn that conduit off. Otherwise, the drain from you is exhausting. Take it from somebody who had to learn this tip the hard way. It can be absolutely exhausting and completely debilitating if you don't learn how to turn those abilities off. My next top tip for baby witches is to always be asking why. So great, you've gone off, you found yourself the most amazing witchcraft book, you're flicking through, it's all very interesting, you're absorbing this knowledge, great, that's the answer, yeah? Maybe. Just because somebody has written a book or made a YouTube video or made a film or whatever, doesn't mean that information is going to be right for everybody in every situation. My experiences of witchcraft are unique to myself. Now, I could write a book all about my experiences and kind of teach you my ways of witchcraft, but that's going to be very different to the next witch, because their experiences are theirs and my experiences are mine. So in the same way that multiple herbs have different correspondences, and you might work with one particular herb to get a particular result, the next witch might work with another herb to get the same result. Always question the veracity and the validity of the information that you are trying to absorb, whether that is from a book, from a video, or from a coven, or just from somebody that you know. Question them, ask them why. Why do you use rose quartz in that way? If they can't give you an answer from their perspective, if it's just because, then do a bit more research. And never ever stop asking that question, why? Because your experiences will be your experiences. In 5, 10, 20 years time, you will have had your own experiences in the craft, so you will have your own knowledge of what works for you and what doesn't. At that point, you might write a book. Fantastic, well done, you're a published author, you've got an amazing witchcraft book out there. But again, it's only from your perspective. My perspective could be very, very different. So always ask why. At the end of the day, as knowledge is passed from one person to the next, that knowledge should always be tested. Is it repeatable? This is where you want to take a scientific approach. Is that result repeatable? Is it repeatable by a different person in a different way? If so, then great. That could be a bit of universal knowledge, but it might not be. Always, always, always ask why. And if the person can't give you a valid answer, then question their knowledge even further. My next tip for baby witches or those new to the craft is you do you, boo. Someone's always going to take umbrance, someone's always going to take offence, they're always going to have an issue with what you do. Whether you are the lightest, fluffiest, light-working, wonderful, angelic, spiritual person and you are just trying to help the universe, someone's still going to take umbrage with it. Someone is still going to have an opinion, you're still going to get trolled, so at the end of the day, just do you. If you believe in dragons, great. If you work with deity, fantastic. If you are a ceremonial witch and you work with incredibly complicated sigils and workings and all of this paraphernalia, absolutely amazing. You do you, because there is always going to be someone out there that has an opinion, and the hardest lesson to learn is not to take that to heart. My next tip for baby witches is to remember that you are human, unless you are from Venus. But anyway, you are a human being, okay? Which means you are flawed. So yeah, there will be a time where you are in the most wonderful spiritual zone. You're in a ritual, you've cast your circle, everything is amazing. You're having a wonderful conversation with deity, and then you fart. Or then you mispronounce a word, or you know, instead of saying Hecate you say Hera, or whatever it may be. There will be a mistake, because we've all made those mistakes. Now, in the middle of a ritual, that can feel incredibly embarrassing, particularly if you're around other people, particularly if you're with a coven. It can be really, really embarrassing, right? But also, it's really, really common. We all do it at some point. We all stumble over our words. Trust me, I've been filming this video nearly an hour already, and I'm only this far in because I stumble over my words all the time. All you have to do, see, that's an example of it. I'm going to leave that one in actually as an example. Just remember that the universe has a sense of humour. Otherwise, why would men have nipples? So this tip is all about learning to go with the flow and just accept the fact that mistakes will happen because you are a human. Hi, I'm just popping in to remind you to hit the subscribe button and then click your bell icon, change your settings to all, that way YouTube should notify you each and every time I upload a video. But if you would like to support myself and this channel just a little bit more, you can always go across to buymeacoffee.com/Beyond Authentic, where you can in fact buy me a coffee. Thank you so much for those of you that are supporting me. It really helps what I do here on the channel. My next top tip could be a little bit controversial, particularly in this TikTok world that we live in now. And that is, just be a witch. Just be a witch. Don't worry when you're starting off about being a crystal witch or a sea witch or a green witch or a kitchen witch or whatever. When I first came into the craft, those labels and subcategories didn't exist in the same way they do now. There would be definitions, obviously. So you might have somebody saying, I'm a witch in the British tradition, or I'm a witch in the Irish tradition. They were very general and very widespread labels, but it basically told you enough. But it was kind of understood that most witches dabbled in most things. So for example, if you were a Wiccan following the Alexandrian path, your rituals would have a certain flavour, and you might say to someone, I'm an Alexandrian Wiccan. Fantastic. That would tell another witch kind of where your craft comes from, roughly what your belief structure is, but it would also be understood that you would work with maybe the elements and crystals and herbs, and you might do some divination with runes or tarot or whatever. It would be understood that just because you were following this Alexandrian Wiccan path, that you would still dabble in lots of different areas. Whereas now, particularly with TikTok and other social media forms, there really does seem to be this pressure to say you are a divination witch. Well, I use tarot. I've used tarot for nearly 25 years. Does that mean I'm just a divination witch? No. I've done healing. Am I just a healing witch? No. I'm a witch. I am an eclectic hedge witch in the British tradition. At this point, just learn your craft. Don't worry about focusing in on such a little minute niche within witchcraft. Just learn as much as you can. My next top tip for baby witches is very linked into that last one, and that is to always keep an open mind. Just because you meet somebody and they tell you about their path and you think, oh, I'm not interested in any of that, it doesn't mean that you can't have an amazingly fulfilling conversation. I once worked with a group of very, very different practitioners, but we all came together once a month and there would be different rituals, and they would come from different backgrounds depending on the practitioner leading that ritual. So one month the ritual might be very Norse based, so all about Vikings and runes and lots of that imagery. The next month it could be about crystals and healing. The next month it could be about something completely different. And that was a fascinating and really, really interesting and eye-opening experience for me, because there were people that followed paths that I have no interest in going down personally, but because that was their area of expertise and their area of knowledge, when they were sharing that knowledge, it was fascinating. But what also happened was we all started to notice the similarities between each of our individual paths, and how even though we'd all come at this at various different times in our lives and various different experiences, there were certain similarities that were kind of universal. How we wrap those up in the imagery, the pantheons or whatever, that might change, but the underlying root of it all was very, very similar. And so yeah, keep an open mind. Just because somebody says that they are from a part of the practice that leaves you absolutely cold in this moment, doesn't mean they don't have things to teach you, and that some of those lessons you may carry with you for the rest of your time in the craft. My next top tip for baby witches is one that I wish I had learned far earlier than I did, and that is that it's not necessary to have an encyclopedic knowledge of witchcraft at any point in your craft. There is a reason that we write things down. There is a reason that we have books of shadows, grimoires. There is a reason that a lot of books have been published, a lot of knowledge is out there. because nobody can hold all of this information in their head at all times. There are things that I have learnt and forgotten, and learnt and forgotten probably in my journey in the craft. And that's right, and that's proper, because our paths take us on all these different winding roads, and nobody can be expected to remember everything. That is why you take notes. And that leads me to my next top tip. My last two tips are the most important in my opinion. So if I had to rank them, these two would probably be joint first at the top of whatever ranking list. Now, the first one of these is take notes. I know, everybody says it, right? Everybody says it. And in the moment when you're just learning, it's like, oh, it feels like homework. It feels like study. I can't be bothered. Do it anyway. Please, please, please do it anyway, because only by taking these notes are you going to be able to learn from the things that work, and more importantly the things that don't, and actually build your craft on your experiences. So if you don't take notes, how do you remember what herbs you used in a ritual 3 months ago? How do you remember which moon phase you were working with 2 years back when so and so happened? It's very, very difficult. So take notes. Get yourself a notebook. It doesn't have to be an expensive notebook, just a plain basic ring bound notebook like this that you can pick up for £1 or $2 or a couple of dollars is really, really ideal just to start taking notes. Now later on you can branch out into books of shadows and journals and all of that, but you just want to get into the habit of writing down what it is you're doing. Now, my friend Tiffany over at bewitching.bemused has actually created this, which is a magic journal, which is available on Amazon. This I really like, actually. I talked about it in a video before, because it gives you kind of notes and it gives you cues as to what to write down. So it says your intention, your pre-ritual divination outcomes. Before you do the working, pull a tarot card, an oracle card, or throw some bones or the runes or whatever it is you do. And it's got all sorts of different things, the instructions that you did, the tools you use, the items you use, the ingredients, the day of the week, the time, all of that. It's just a really good little reminder of kind of those things that you want to take note of for the future, because then you can start going back and looking at the workings you did, which ones were successful, which ones weren't, which bits of it you want to tweak. And that is something very, very important for the next tip. So my last tip for baby witches is to start your own book of shadows. Now my advice would be, don't go off at the beginning of your practice and buy one of these amazingly thick, hugely expensive kind of handmade books that you start writing in, because chances are 2 or 3 years down the line you will be doing something very different and you'll have this very expensive book that you no longer work with. My advice would be to get something like an A4 ring binder. Okay, this is just a really posh one. It's like a presentation case. I picked it up in a second-hand shop and I immediately knew that I wanted to turn it into my kind of working book of shadows, my A4 size one. Plus it looks really good in thumbnails, doesn't it? It really does. But it is just an A4 binder, but it's really useful because you can put bits of knowledge in, you can take it out, you can write notes, you can change things around. And for me, this is a really useful one for scrolls, bits of information I find off the internet and things like that. So this is kind of like my, I guess this is my internet book of shadows, if you like. It's lots of stuff that I found from various different places that I pulled together. So it's almost like an encyclopedia. This isn't my only book of shadows type book. I also have this, which is my old working book of shadows. Now, this is something where when I've done my workings and I've written them down in a notebook or in a journal, I then transfer them into this when I know that they've worked. So some workings, some spells, some rituals, they might be like really immediate. So within 2 or 3 days, you want to get the result. Other ones might take a lot longer to show whether they've worked or not. And all the way through that process, what I don't want to do is be writing everything down in this really lovely little leather book, only to then cross them out and go, no, that didn't work. I've changed, you know, I'm no longer using basil. I'm now using mugwort, or I'm now using yarrow, or whatever it is. So for me, I like to keep these little cheap notebooks that I just jot down what I'm doing. But then what I do, once I know that a ritual has worked, that then gets put into my working book of shadows. Now, this is slightly different from a grimoire because this is still adaptable. This is still stuff that is still being worked on. This is still where I might test something else out and add a little ingredient in or take an ingredient out. This isn't yet going into my finished grimoire. I'm 25 years into the craft and I still haven't even started my finished grimoire because I've got so many little books like this, notebooks. This is all about tarot, and then obviously my big internet one, that there's just so much knowledge that I am yet to decide what I want to have in my kind of permanent, you know, passed down the generations grimoire. But as a baby witch, you really want to be starting your working book of shadows. You want to be getting that knowledge. You want to be keeping those records and keeping it with you somewhere that you can dip back into the next time that you want to do a working similar to one that you've already done. So there you go, those are my top 10 tips for baby witches. Let me know your favourite tip down in the comment section. Also let me know if there's any glaring omissions. Is there something that I left off that would be your #1 piece of advice for a baby witch? Do please let me know. But that is it for me today. If you've liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up. And as I always say, stay you, stay safe, stay authentic, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.